Welcome to the painting grand opening. Painting is the process of applying paint to a surface such as canvas or paper to create a picture. So what do we have at the painting center? On the left side here you'll see the setup, what possible things you need for a setup: art shirt, water bucket, half full. Please don't fill it all the way, otherwise it could spill. Paint palette or cup to mix paint, paper towels, brush. Use one brush at a time. You can come up and use multiple brushes, but take one at a time unless you're sharing them with a neighbor. Paper, write your name and class on the back, please. Cleanup, put painting on drying rack, wipe off table, clean and put away paints, wash and put away brush, bucket, and palette or cup. Then we have color wheel, how to mix colors. If you have any, if you don't know how to mix colors, here's color wheel and how to mix different colors together. We have some painting techniques: fill in the shape, outline shape, dabbing, light streaking, blending two colors, over painting, wet on wet, dry brush, texture. Here's an example of a project that a student did based off of a postcard and created the painting using only warm colors. Here are some watercolor techniques, and it's hard to see there with the reflection, but you got wet on wet, double loaded brush, salt, wax resist, toothpick, toilet paper pickup, toilet paper block. I will be putting up some examples of those techniques right below this at a later date. For painting tools and materials. Tools, we have pencil, paint palette, brushes, water bucket, paint shirt, towels, sponge, crayons, toothpick, paint containers, markers, salt, stencils, a ruler, postcards, or images. Materials, pencils, tempera cakes, watercolor paint, crayons, paper, watercolor crayons, watercolor pencils, liquid tempera paint, and markers. Here is a good resource if you're trying to figure out how to express a certain feeling and emotion. You can come to this poster for resources. It tells you what colors will help express those feelings. Balance. Balance is always important in your artwork. Symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial balance. Tells you a little bit more about those. Okay, so let's see. We have different types of paintbrushes here. When you're done, please put the bristles up so that way we can see them. They get squished on the bottom and they don't work as well. I have some cool different types of brushes, including, I call it my Mohawk brushes because it looks like mohawks. Those brushes are good for creating grass techniques or texture. You can experiment with those different types of brushes to see what kinds of different texture you can create for your paintings. Then I have 5 watercolor paint palettes with brushes. Keep those brushes with those paint palettes, please. I have watercolor crayons. You color them like regular crayons, but then you add water and they will bleed out like watercolors. I like the watercolor crayons because they have a different type of texture than just the watercolor paints. If you want to explore with watercolor paper, it's more expensive. It's different than your paper that you would have in your journal. Please use the paper that's over there, but then tape it into your journal so that way we can find them again. And put your name on it. Put them on the drying rack with your name and class, and then I'll hand them back next art time, and you can tape them into your journal. There is toothpicks for the toothpick technique. There is little small packets of salt. Please, those salts are for your artwork, not for eating. Thank you. I have tempera cakes. Just take one palette, just like you would with the other things. You'll see that they have been gradually get used. Some are newer than others. They need to be clean. All my paints need to be clean. You'll see how clean they are when they're up here. Please return them this clean. I'll show you how to do that. We have white and black tempera cakes as well. If you need liquid tempera paint, come and ask me. I have not gotten that out at this time yet, but we'll have containers of that eventually this year. I have postcards that you can borrow for inspiration and for practice. Please return the postcards back here for other students to use. I have paint palettes. This is great for mixing those tempera cakes so you can make your oranges and greens and purples and other colors that you need to make. The water buckets, if you notice, the bottom row is up so it can air out, and the top 2 rows are upside down so it can drip out. and you want to keep them like that at the end of class so they don't get smelly between now and the next class. In the drawers, I don't have them labeled as of yet, but in the drawers, in this first drawer, closest to the sink, there is old calendars and National Geographics, great places for images that you can use. These pictures can be used also for Collage Center or for painting for inspiration or even drawing. In these two drawers, I have paint shirts. If you happen to be wearing a shirt that you're really afraid of getting dirty, please use a paint shirt. There they are. And just put them back when you're done at the end of class. Then, for the sink area, make sure that the sponges are all cleaned out of the sink area. The sink should be clean when you're finished. The most common question I get is, how do you clean out the paints? So I'm going to use a watercolor. Watercolors here as an example. So, you would get your bucket with some water. When you're using tempera cakes or tempera cakes or watercolor, you'll want to get your water or your paints wet. So I'm just putting a drop of water. And that will moisten up the paint. Do that in the beginning while you're setting up everything so it can soak in. Now, as you paint, you can mix that up, and you're painting your picture, and you clean out your brush before you put the brush back into the paints. But if you accidentally get some color mixed in with another, it happens. For example, let's say you get some orange in there. At the end of class, you need to make sure these are yellow, or make sure all your colors are the original colors. So you don't want to leave that at the end of class, because the next person would not be very happy about having orange in their yellow. So to clean that out, what you want to do is clean your brush and dry it. If your paints are already wet, just take your brush and do a swipe. And if you need to do it again, you make sure your brush is dry so it can soak up, especially if the paint's already wet. And then you can do it again. And just do one swipe. If you swirl it around, you're just spreading the mess and not getting any better. If you get your paint and you notice that there's some color in it at the beginning of the hour and this is dry, you will have to get your paint palette wet first, and then you might have to go around it a couple times to get that paint wet, loosened up. But please, with the watercolor, be gentle. The tempera cakes, you can do a little bit more. Make sure at the end of class that your paintbrush is clean, no color in it, and put it back in the watercolor container, and put it back on the center for the next class. Keep the watercolors open so we can see that they're clean for the next class. It's easier for checking out. In fact, if you're using the water or the painting center and you want to make sure the center stays open, it would be a wise choice to take one of the tags when you come in. There needs to be one person that is responsible for the painting center. Since the painting center is orange, you can go ahead and take the tag that's for painting at the beginning of the hour. And what it says is, I am choosing to be responsible for checking the painting center at the start and the end of art class to make sure all supplies are where they should be and are in good condition. If anything is missing or not in good condition, I can fix it or tell Mrs. Banks. Please make sure you tell me at the beginning of the hour if things are not the way they're supposed to be, because I will hold the last class responsible. If you don't tell me at the beginning of the hour and it's not okay, then I hold your class responsible. Look at the picture of the painting center and count the supplies. Is there anything missing or not in its place? If so, fix it or tell Mrs. Banks. Does the material need to be refilled or a tool need to be fixed or replaced? If so, write it down on the refill fix-it list on the blue cart by Mrs. Banks' desk. When all is done, give this tag to Mrs. Banks at the end of class. Thank you for doing this job. Please give this tag to me at the end of class, so that way I know that the job is finished. If you put it back on the wall, I don't know if it's actually been done. So please make sure you hand me this tag at the end of class. And again, welcome to the Painting Center.